Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art. For some reason, this is not an earthquake, I just hit my desk, so it's moving up and down. I'm Derek Mazzoni, thank you so much for being here. We have a special Sama tonight. We're focusing on a band I got turned onto when I was in Montreal for Mundial, which is a great conference of global artists that come through before getting booked all over North America. And I got turned on to a few bands that were doing a particular type of throat singing, part of an Inuit style, Northern Canadian style of music. I chatted with a few bands, and then most recently, some friends from Global Toronto turned me on to this particular band. They're known as Piksik, and there are two sisters, Ayalik and Inuksuk, Mackay, and Tiffany and Ayalik. It's an Inuit style throat singing. We probably know Mongolian and Tuvan style throat singing. This is a little different, and it's beautiful, and it's haunting, and it is it really still sticks with you. I love it. Their bio is that with roots in Nunavut's Kitikmeot and Kivalliq regions, the sisters grew up in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, where endless sunlight shines for 2 short summer months and deep wintry darkness consumes the rest of the year. These environmental extremes had a huge impact on Tiffany and Kylie's overall aesthetic, and their pair have always engrossed themselves in creating soundtracks to life that reflect this natural phenomena. I have not been up there, but I've seen pictures and video, and this music is just fits perfectly from what I've seen, and it is a powerful testament to the strength of a culture to persevere through some very harrowing and difficult times, and also how art can truly transcend and bring people together from all over the world. Once you hear it, you'll understand. So let's start with a little bit of music from Piksik from Northwest Territories in Canada. And that was a Piksik, which I have the pleasure of having in the studio right now. Greetings.
Hi, Derek.
Hi. So that was a lovely piece. Tell me how you guys got started. This is powerful work. What's the origin story?
We began throat singing as children, probably about 4 or 5 years old, I would say. And it was a pastime that we enjoyed with our cousins. It was a game, so an element of throat singing is that for Inuit style is that it's musical, but it's also a game. And so we played it. It wasn't very serious. It was very much a fun thing that we would do and just enjoy together as children. Um, and I think when we started to approach our teenage years, we realized that colonization was this big thing that happened, and that's why it was so hard to learn and to find people who could teach you. Because we'd always wondered, like, why is it so hard to get people to teach us new songs? Um, and so it started to make sense. And at that point, I think we began taking it a lot more seriously and seeing it not just as a game or as just a musical practice, but also as a very vital act of, cultural revitalization.
It was, and Inuk and Tiffany, thank you for being here, but please chime in. It was banned, it was suppressed, it was considered to be evil by the Catholic Church. It's part of this ongoing horrific story of of children being put into schools and having their culture suppressed, being beaten for speaking their language. You know, the way the church said that to beat the savage and to save the man was horrific. But so in order, obviously you're not good. There aren't going to be teachers like that are out and going to tell you. How did you find teachers? How did you find the music to continue?
Well, similar to the Indian residential school system in Canada, I know that the States had various, similar projects, colonization projects in a very similar vein with boarding schools. And so although they're culturally different between the countries, the attitudes were exactly the same, in both countries, I think. And, the legacy of those things is not just over when the schools are shut down or when the government realizes like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Some of these things are generations long, are lasting, legacies that were really sort of instilled into so many of our people at such a young age. And you know, when we've seen it even with elders who are in their 70s and 80s and older, who still carry with them the shame and the fear that they were, instilled with when they were small children,
Mm.
you know, decades later. And that contributed to why it was so difficult for us to learn some of these cultural practices from our elders and from our very own family, because I can't imagine living with that much fear to even just sing a song when you
Mhm.
think about it. It's
Especially as a kid.
especially as a
Mhm.
kid. And there's elders in my community who, when I've asked to like, hey, can you teach me an old song? We'll go through about 4 or 5 hymns first, even if they're in Inuktitut or Inuinnaqtun, in our language, and then the song will come out that I'm looking for, and then the traditional song will come. But to even have some of our elders feel that fear that, when you're told when you're very, very young that this is a demonic, or, this is an evil thing, or this isn't the way, and there's only one way, it's really profound to think that that is still in effect 60, 70 years later. And, that's why it was so hard for us to find teachers. And it's incredible to see the bravery now of these cultural carriers, of these next generation of singers and artists who are seeking out those teachings, and that you know cultural carriers within our communities are being emboldened and realize and stripping away the shame and the fear, so that we can be sharing these things with each other, because this is all stuff we should have been learning, freely and openly, instead of shrouded in mystery and secrecy.
I think too, just to give people a bit of perspective, Tiffany and I, our generation, is the first to not go to residential school. So if people can let that sink in, our
Yeah.
parents' generation, this wasn't a super long time ago. Like, this is very living history.
Hmm.
And when in Canada, when the last residential, we'll call them school, closed, the Spice Girls were charting.
Wow.
So just to give people an idea, when you hear this was so long ago, move on, let it go, it really wasn't. It's a very present reality in our communities to this day.
Are people saying that?
Oh yeah, as early as I can remember, it's like, ah, it's ages ago, let it go, move
Yeah.
on. I mean, even just this past week, we've been subjected to interactions of that nature, even in the wake of discovering the tragedy of 215 tiny bodies in the graveyard at a school.
And I think part of the that was long ago, let it go mentality is sort of the falsity that these are black and white photos of kids, when
Yeah.
really, you know, where there are other photos that are in color, that are
Hmm.
Hmm.
digital, even when these things were happening. So that's a hard thing to be hearing, is that was a long time ago. And these were very, very recent and very much in our family as well. We both have relatives and parents that went to residential school, so it wasn't that long ago.
You guys are carrying quite. I mean, it's one thing to like, I'm going to be a singer. and get out there, but to actually carry that kind of weight, and it's an amazing power. Because I didn't realize that it was your parents. I knew that the schools were shutting down, but I didn't realize that it was that close. And so you're the first generation that's now actually taking this musical heritage. I'm getting very clear talking about it, and bringing it to your children and your grandchildren. It was just like this. No, we're going to take this out and bring it to light. It's like this. I just finished this book on when women were drummers. It's the history of how the patriarchy took over the matriarchy, and it was usually like the war gods came in, and then they would marry / rape the female gods of that tribe. It's a fabulous book, but it was like this. You had this culture that came in, Christianity, the settlers, as you say, the colonizers, that tried to suppress and just kill your culture fundamentally.
Yeah.
And you're now bringing that out. Like, it's not dead. Obviously, you're creating work. And it is so important. And you're also part of a group, because we had a tribe called Red on my show on KXP. I had Jeremy Dutcher on recently. So I'm asking two things. First of all, I'm so glad you're doing this, and I'm so glad that you're presenting the beauty and complexity of Inuit culture. Like a lot of people didn't know this. That this kind of, there was a game to this. You're carrying a lot, basically. I was going to talk about your music, but now suddenly we're going to be talking about this broad history. But I didn't really think of it as in like you're part of the first wave of Indigenous artists in Canada that the Canadian government says like, we're sorry. Well, good. And now the church is saying we're sorry, but you're carrying your culture into the 21st century, and you're just like a language. We're all hoping that it will thrive and grow and continue. But the thing that's interesting to me is that there's like this duality that sometimes happens within this, where it's like, oh, that's native music, so it has to be a particular way. It's kind of like stuck in amber. And then you're actually part of a generation that's like, I'm living in the 21st century.
Exactly.
I'm not living in the 1800s. I appreciate that, but that's not who I am right now. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I'm curious, as I was listening, like how this is evolving for you, in light of also, it's not just singing love songs. You're presenting your culture.
I think it's one of the things that I love most about what we've made together is the really strong roots in traditional style throat singing that sort of grew with us through childhood, and that we feel confident enough in that we were able to bring it into a 21st century context in a way that felt very authentic to who we are as Inuit today. And so although we use technology and looping, and it's our own expression, our own artistic expression, the roots of the songs, the builds of the songs are deeply rooted in an ancient tradition. And throat singing is having a gorgeous renaissance right now. We've come a long way from being just about extinct. We just about lost throat singing. By 1950, it just wasn't done at all. And the first Inuk Anglican minister to Nunavut, he encouraged the women to record their songs on wax cylinder because he was realizing that it was disappearing, and so he basically encouraged them to preserve this practice, and so that was sort of the core of how it became preserved. And from there, it went from being finable by prison or fine. You could be charged, criminally charged
for singing.
Yes, for singing. So we went from there to here, where some of my favorite memories are passing through small communities in the north, and you see another throat singer from across the airport, and you wave, and then
run
you come
in
over,
slow motion towards each other.
and have you learned any new songs? And they're like, yeah, you. And then you get out your phones and you do a quick exchange before you jump on your next flight. And so to see it be that level of, resurgency and here-ness is very, very encouraging.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Thank you. So you can tour. I mean, before COVID, obviously. So there was
Yeah.
enough support system. Is it at the level where you could? Um, was there support from government, from cultural institutions, to like, hey, we got to spend time and money to make sure that the next generation knows this and learns this, or is this bootstrapped?
I think that, for the most part, separate from the cultural element, just as artists, um, we're very lucky in Canada to have a granting body, through the government, and that there are many, many more grants available for artists in Canada than there are in the States. And so that that is a blessing for sure, and that is government money. So it's even better if it's being used towards, profiling Inuit artists, especially, or Indigenous artists, whatever their background is, who are
Mm-hmm.
trying to do this work. And there are specific Indigenous grants through the government, through the Canada Council for the Arts, that do focus on the reclamation, the learning, and the dissemination of traditional practices. So, there is, a little bit of support in some of those
Now,
areas. Now,
now,
it's very
yes.
recent. It's
Not
very
not
recent.
originally though, yeah.
And it's in terms of the work that needs to happen. Excuse me.
It's okay.
In terms of the work that needs to happen, it's even smaller, the support of what is needed. So it is a bit of a band-aid in a lot of situations, to a pretty huge
Yeah.
issue. But at least there's that. And I think, I'm super grateful for things like Facebook, for example, in some regard, to help create these communities of Indigenous people, to like create digital communities in some ways, because especially in the Arctic, where a lot of these communities are totally isolated and fly in places,
Mm-hmm.
it is hard to create these opportunities of cross pollination, separate from, oh, we passed in the airport and here we are, like, sharing this like brief little moment together. So with something like Facebook, where there's all these like amazing community pages, the ability to share and disseminate information through a medium like that has been, like, I think, a super great point of pride, to be like, oh, look, my son caught his first polar bear, or like, my daughter went out seal hunting and this is her first catch, or like, hey, I learned this new thing. And so there's been especially in Nunavut, this like sharing circle that's been able to happen. And it's especially us living down south, being a part of some of these groups, it does, feel in some ways that we are part of a community. And it's definitely something that, even especially now through COVID, we're missing. So we have to find these ways to kind of like support each other, because the often the institutional support is not there, or it is, and it's very nominal,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. So
I love that story of how, because it's coming up a lot. I've been doing this weekly now for over a year and a half, and I'm trying to focus on Indigenous cultures all over the world. And tech seems to be playing this really intriguing role.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's a playing intriguing role for everybody, where you're able to make community, you're able to share, you're able to actually go way back, like those wax cylinders, and present them, and then everybody's online in one form or another. Not everybody, but most people. It's this hyper accelerated school. It's a hyper accelerated way for people to actually get the traditional pieces, the authentic, and then create their own versions of what their lives are like now with these learnings and these cultures and these languages. But if let's play some music right now, because I like how we're bantering back and forth. This is good. I wasn't expecting this, but this is perfect. If you're just tuning in right now, this is Piksik on Sama. Let's talk about you two as artists now. Do we have? Let's talk about new records or anything right now. Like you've been, it's been COVID. COVID hit the indigenous communities harder than most communities. We've heard stories of what's been going on Navajo reservations in the United States. So, but it seems now we're getting away from it. Well, not away from it. We're just going through it. Away from it. We're going through this, and two things are going to happen. One, people are going to want to go out and see music, see art, see performance. They want to get out of their houses. And two, artists are going to go on the road to play there. And three things. This technology allows people to share your music and hear it and experience it and your videos in ways that might have been even impossible a year before the pandemic. What do you hope to do? What's going on with you as artist?
We got lots in the works, like always. um, yeah, the cool silver lining out of a really crappy situation that was COVID was we were able to spend time at home with our families and each other. Up until COVID, we had been, touring 10 months out of the year, sometimes it felt like, and we would be away for weeks and weeks, long stints. And there's kind of a glamorization of like life on the road that happens a lot, and I think people can get really overly romantic about it, but I'm like, the coffee is awful, the beds are awful, your back gets messed up, you eat bad food, your guts are all messed up, you're tired, and like, there's all those realities that we don't always think about when we're like, oh, you're on the road. I'm like, yes, we're in hotel rooms across the world.
Yeah.
You must see so many places. I'm like, I know what every airport and hotel looks like. That's right next door to the airport.
Yeah, it's true.
So, during especially during that first year of lockdown, we were able to, for the most part, just like be together with our family, do these creative projects that we were working on, create a little home studio, do our day of work, and then like have dinner with our families. And, that was a really profound experience also, to be like, wow, this is the longest that we've been home for this stretch of time in our adult lives, really, so that was a very grounding and rooting experience for us to make art from that place, because a lot of other times we've been making art from a complete place of depletion because of being so burnt out, the demands, the touring, deadlines, all of those things makes a different kind of art, which is good, but it's different and it's not as sustainable. So for us to be creating from a deep rooted place and a grounded place, surrounded by, the good stuff at a pace that worked for us, has been really, really profound. And we did an album. In October, we produced a pretty awesome live show. We rented out a church here in Vancouver that had a really excellent,
Gothic architecture vibe,
like awesome architecture. And then just as a church was very committed to reconciliation with Indigenous people. And we reclaimed that church, and we brought our scary throat singing practice into the church and kind of reclaimed that space for a show, which was very powerful for us to do. We're working on another full-length album right now. Inuksuk, you want to talk about our cool instrument that we're
and I'll just,
inventing?
before
Please.
that, mention that that show did so well that we got a lot of requests to turn it into an album. So we will be releasing that live performance as its own album shortly. And the new album that we're working on, we've designed a new instrument built from caribou antler with a whale rib bow, and it'll be stringed rather like a harp. So we're calling it the Death Harp because we don't have a name yet.
Okay.
But
Do we have pictures or anything?
Not yet. A
Okay.
luthier in Vancouver is building it. It's just about ready. Tiff is picking it up on Monday. It's going to be just this gorgeous, earthy ode to the ocean sort of,
Wow.
you know, haunting piece. So we're very excited to hear how it sounds. We have no idea how it sounds. So I'm going to take it north for the summer and christen it, as it were.
Get to
Hmm.
know her.
Yep. And figure out how it sounds and learn how to play it. And then when I head back to Vancouver this September, we'll begin recording. So we have the framework for a very large album. It's a very high concept piece that we've been working on for a long time. So we're very excited to send that out into the world in 2022.
Okay. I
And
look
we
forward.
actually have a new single coming out.
Oh,
Hmm.
yes.
We did a really cool virtual COVID collaboration with this pretty rad duo, Sámi duo, an Indigenous group from Finland called Hilda. And
Vilda.
sorry,
Vilda.
Vilda
Vilda.
duo, who is made up of a woman named Hilda and Vivi. And we were able to, through Folk Music Canada, do this collaboration, and we actually met them a couple of times. Inuk and I were on tour in Finland, and we met them there. And then we were also part of a larger collaboration piece in Montreal a few years ago. So we've crossed paths a few times, and we were so stoked to be able to collaborate with them, officially on a track. And the style of singing of their style of singing and ours really complemented each other, rooted in different traditions, in yoiking from the Sámi tradition,
Hmm.
and Katajjaq from throat singing from ours. So it's this beautiful conversation between two different styles of Indigenous traditional singing, brought into 2021 with all of our technological sensibilities. And that's going to be coming out later on in July. So we're really
Awesome.
excited for that too.
What are you feeling when you're performing with Sami artists from Finland and create? They're performing yoke and you're doing throat singing. What's the emotional story that's going on within you when that's happening? Because to me, it sounds fascinating and it sounds like a portal to a completely different time and
Oh,
a completely
totally.
different way.
Yeah, there's definitely that transportative feeling to the track. And I think we had all felt this momentum building. There's a lot of energy and movement in the song. And so there's definitely something that sort of picks you up and whisks you away into this totally other feeling dimension, and then sort of gently places you back in
Hmm.
reality at the end.
The
And
thing.
when this is all over, hopefully we can get together in person, the four of us, and actually like perform it, or do music video or something, because it's
Mm.
we haven't, the way that we created was like having like a very sparse sort of foundation track, and then we throat sang. We gave lots of like options, and then we just kind of bandied the song back and forth with layers, and so we weren't ever able to be in the same room,
Mhm.
obviously. And so yeah, we've yet to see the power that could happen if when we are all together singing it live, and we're really excited for that.
Oh, I can't. I mean, that was the whole intention of Sama. Also, is to just bring
Mm.
these kind of experiences here because there are two things that are going on to me personally. It's voice, and that is like the primal instrument. Fundamentally, it's the one that actually just connects people. In so many ways, other instruments are manifestations of the voice. That was the
Mm-hmm.
Secret Trio was
Mm-hmm.
just told me that. And the fact that you've got indigenous cultures that have this powerful, amazing story that isn't the dominant story. The Judeo-Christian, Aramaic cultures that have taken over, at least the West
Most of the
and
world.
North
Yeah.
America, most of the world. Um, but it's another voice. It's another voice, as in like we've been hearing the same voice, like
Mm.
like the way you're describing your grandmother starts with a bunch of hymns just to make sure that everything's okay, and then presents you the traditional piece. This is an
Yeah.
opportunity for the real voices, the other voices that were going, that are just as important, if not more so.
Yeah.
And even now more so than ever, because those indigenous cultures have had an ability to live within harmony within nature. And now, we're in the middle of a climate disaster, and we need to learn from these cultures on how to actually live with the planet, not try to dominate the planet from, I'm going to get hell from this, in the Judeo-Christian way, where it's like,
Yeah.
we're above it all, and we
Dominion
control
over the earth.
dominion, and it's just like, you're
That
an
says
idiot.
it right there. Yeah.
So this, the indigenous cultures don't have that. That's not, I'm not an expert, but everything that I've read and seen and talked to people, it's like it doesn't work like that. These are we're all part of
These
the
are our
same
relatives. I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of how a lot of people view our relationship to land and nature. Is it's not about ownership, and it's about relationship.
Exactly.
And knowing that your survival depends on the respectful interaction between yourself and the weather, and the animals that you need to survive, and the safety to know how to travel across these vast distances. So I think when settlers hear the word my land or our land, they're assuming ownership. But what many Indigenous people, when they say my land or my area, we're implying a relationship with another,
Like how you might refer to
entity.
a spouse, maybe.
Like this
Yeah.
is my
yeah.
is my
You
sister.
don't own them.
You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
own it. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
And especially with throat singing is inspired by the land. It's inspired by what's around you. We're mimicking and interpreting nature, and anything that makes noise around us. And to be able to be observing nature, to be inspired to make art about it, is a profound way to create. And that nature is changing. The nature of our ancestors is much different place than the nature we're observing. So that's going to affect how we sing as well.
Absolutely.
I think also in terms of concept, with the loss of language, it can be really difficult to communicate some of our ideas around land and around relationship. So like in Inuktitut, we have a phrase Ayakatigi, and it could be translated as harmony and balance, but I was talking to my dad about it recently, and he was saying, well, it's not like a state you achieve, how Western thinking might think about harmony and balance. It's a process that's ongoing. It's the pursuit of harmony and balance that you're always in that motion. You never achieve it. You practice it.
Not a destination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's the journey, definitely. And so this is okay. First of all, let's hear some more music. This is the thing that makes artists so important, because you can feel it and you can hear it, but you can't be told it. It's like trying to. One of the reasons that I started Sama was that, like, the last 4 years have been difficult in this country, and as an immigrant, especially, even though I look like I came from a communist country, I went through some difficulty assimilating to this place, but now my mother is perplexed at what's going on in her community. It's like all these new immigrants have come in, and they're like, I don't know about these people, and I'm like, you have to. You're being told a whole bunch of propaganda. So I'm presenting music to them from all of her neighbors, who she's like a little apprehensive about because they're from Mozambique, they're from Brazil, but she loves the music, and it changes her perspective on it, because she's hearing one thing about the other, but it's a whole other thing when she's eating the food and hearing the music, and it opens up her heart. And then what we're talking about here, that relationship, that journey, that it's not the destination, it's the relationship with all of nature. And yes, these are our ancestors, and you have to have a mutual respect for each other, because it's not sustainable. You could lecture somebody till you're blue in the face about that, and they're not going to. It's just not going to work. But if they're feeling it through the power of song, through the power of music, the poetry, whatever it is, it just taps them. I call it flanking. It's just like, whoa, I didn't know. You confuse people in the most beautiful ways, and we need artists such as yourselves to be much more confusing. Because that's how we're going to get through this. I don't know where we're going, and it seems like it doesn't really matter, but that's how we're going to get there somewhere, somehow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons we love to do our music without lyrics is because we do want the feelings that we're explaining kind of transcend language to us in how we're thinking about it. And the sounds and the feelings and the concepts that we're wrestling with sometimes are so complicated that to put language to them in a way almost, does them a disservice by trying to kind of over intellectualize about some of these things, when really they're complicated and so simple at the same time. And I think through us doing the sonic weaving that we like to do with our music, we're able to help people disengage what they might be thinking about, or any sort of preconceived notions that they have about Indigenous people or Inuit music or Inuit in general, and really do a sort of cracking open of the chest and try and access some of those common human places in a different way, and then we love to have conversations about it afterwards. And when we're when we're performing, we don't do a lot of banter. We don't, talk to each other or talk to the audience and through words. We like to just kind of arrive, open up, do our thing, connect sonically, have a finish, and then we love to talk with people afterwards in the lobby, or have these conversations once people's hearts are a little bit more engaged, because then we can come at it as humans together instead of antagonistically, in a way.
It feels like we're focusing on opening some kind of portal, and if we were to speak in English and speak at all, it would almost just make it go away.
Yes.
Yeah, and we want the audience to experience it, so we really focus on just opening this dimensional type portal. That's how it feels, to invite people in, and then to let them go back to their lives at the end.
Blah blah blah. Words.
But changed. But actually, there are certain shows that I've been to, as a young man, that I still resonate with me, and I've seen an insane amount of shows, and stuff like that works. It works on there's the chakras, the harmony, quantum physics, all of these things that are basically talking about you're hitting them differently, in a completely different way, and it's a really interesting, powerful way to do that. And it lasts. It will last. And if you're presenting that to a young person, it will last forever. And it's, and this is heavy, and I don't want it to, you're also singers, you're living your lives. It's like, but it's also like, we're going through a pandemic. We've gone through some really difficult times. We're about to hit even more difficult times with climate. It's going to be artists that will help people get through the fear, and a lot of these things with the people around me that voted for the last administration, etc., they're coming at it from fear. They're not like stoked. Yeah, this is going to be great. They're terrified, and so now it's artists that are going to actually help them through this process, and it's not making them go into nostalgia, but actually go into the future. That portal you're talking about, go through there, and then actually have that sense of harmony with themselves, with other people. And so, it's a big task, and it's going to be beyond our lifetimes. But what other work is more important than that right now? Does that make sense?
Totally.
We could talk for a long time, but I'm going to finish with another piece of music. Thank you for being here. I look forward to welcoming you to our stages here. I look forward to playing your music, celebrating your work, and it's really powerful, and it's such a joy to meet you two.
Thank you so much, Derek. We can't wait to meet in real life.
Yeah,
we're it's going to happen. Your story is part of a broader story that needs to be heard right now, and no better time than now to have that. And hopefully there'll be support, even the small stuff. We'll put your Bandcamp link on there, and then do whatever we can. But continue and grow and be well, and have fun north during perpetual summer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thanks, Derek. You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Oh.